It's my pleasure to welcome this lovely panel of incredibly smart women. And today we're going to be discussing substantiation of women's products, which we're going to make as sexy as we can, right? Yes. Before we begin, a couple announcements. The coolest one of these, you can read this, is that happy hour is right after this. So after this, we can all go out on the floor and get a drink. And if you want to continue talking about substantiation for women's products with these lovely women, I'm volunteering you all. You can't leave. Stay for happy hour, and we'll talk more. And okay, next slide, please. If everyone would please get out your cell phones and click this QR code. This is a new thing we're doing. Yay, technology. It is called Vivox, and it is the way for you, the audience, to participate with us, the panel, that doesn't require us running around with a microphone. And I really want you to tell me after this panel, if you miss the microphone, tell me. And we can, well, we'll see what Amanda thinks about getting rid of Vivox, but this is going to be really cool. There is going to be a poll on there for you to fill in, and then, here it is. What's the most confusing or difficult aspect of substantiating your products or your ingredients claims? So plop something in there. We'll see what comes up. And then this will spark some discussion, hopefully, from us. And then as we get going, I'll talk about it. You'll be able to ask questions in the app. It'll pop up on my app, and then I can ask the panel. So I'm hoping that this is easier for everyone to participate with, and you don't. We get what you want out of this panel, rather than just us talking about what we want to talk about. Sifting through poorly conducted studies, linking scientific evidence with commercial claims that are appealing to consumers. That's great. FDA's regulation, how FDA will review claims, FDA's regulation, what can be said and what can't be said, cost and lengthy process of most clinical research organizations. These are all great and things that we're going to talk about today. So keep putting them up there if you'd like. And we're going to do another poll later on. So this is great. Thank you so much. Lack of clinicals in women. Yes, absolutely. OK. Before we begin the panel, I would like to just thank everybody for coming and welcome Karen Howard from WIN. This panel is in partnership with Women in Nutraceuticals. Karen, take it away.
Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon, I believe.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Karen Howard. I'm on the board of directors for WIN. I'm on the original board of directors, and thank you for those of you who re-elected us, so those of us who are up again. I want to show of hands, how many of you in the audience are WIN members? Okay, we're going to change that. We need more. And if you're a sponsor of WIN, are you in the room? Yes. So this has been an amazing adventure. I've been in nonprofit almost my entire professional life. I have never seen things kick off with more steroids in my life. This is a group that is absolutely unstoppable. So in our quest to improve the number of women who are in the C-suite, to improve the amount of investment in women-owned operations, and of course to enhance the number of women who are doing scientific research and research on women's health issues, everything has taken off gangbusters. So I'm really excited to be able to introduce this amazing talent that has wandered into the WIN life, and I really strongly encourage all of you to become a part of this amazing organization, and that includes all the men that are in the room, and help support this amazing journey that we're on, because if it continues at this rate, we're going to have our problem solved in the next, 48 hours. Thank you.
Yay, Karen. WIN networking tomorrow. I missed that. Thanks, Sonia. WIN networking tomorrow in the Connect Hub, right, Sonia? Yes. 1:15 p.m. Come hang out with WIN. 11:15. So sorry, 11:15. 11:15. All right. Now I would like to introduce the panel. First, we have Rachel Kreider. Rachel, raise your hand. She's a VP of Product Innovation and Science at GNC. Hello, Rachel. Thank you. Next, we have Salma Fadhala. She is the Senior Director of Quality and Regulatory at JDS Therapeutics. Hi, Salma.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Next, we have Linda Alvarez. Linda is the co-founder and CEO of Lavelle Nutrition. Welcome. Linda Alvarez, MD. Yeah. And finally, Lauren Aronson. Lauren is the chair of the Advertising and Consumer Protection Partner at Amin Wasserman Gurnani. Yay. With that, Lauren's going to take it away to give us a 10-minute sort of overview on substantiation, and then we will start our chat. Thank you.
Everyone. Okay. Hello, everyone. So, before we get started on the conversation, I just wanted to give you guys an overview of what the substantiation landscape is for those of you that are making health claims in general and also health claims for women's products. So a lot of the time, in this space, we think a lot about the FDA, which, obviously you should be. But there are other agencies as well that take a look at health claims, like the Federal Trade Commission and the National Advertising Division. So today we're going to focus on what exactly those particular agencies look at when you substantiate health claims. So the Federal Trade Commission looks at dietary supplements and food products, but they look beyond the labels, they look at everything else. So while the FDA is focused on what's on the label, and they care about whether you're making a structure function claim or a disease claim and what category of product you're talking about, whether it's a food or a dietary supplement or a medical food, the FTC does not care. What they care about is whether or not the claims you're making are substantiated. So historically, the FTC applies what we call the Pfizer factors, so you can see them listed here. And the level of substantiation that they deem necessary will depend on the type of product, the type of claim, the harm that can come from making an unsubstantiated claim. So while the FTC doesn't, for example, look at disease claims, they are more likely to be attracted to claims that look like disease claims in deciding whether or not to pursue enforcement. The consequences of a false claim, if people are not getting, for example, medical treatments because you're making claims that your product can prevent or treat or cure cancer. That's something obviously the FTC is concerned about. And we saw a lot of that during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the FTC went after a lot of companies that were making unsubstantiated COVID-19 claims. And then finally, the amount of substantiation that experts in the field believe is reasonable. And I'm sure that sounds very vague to you. In 2022, the FTC released its health products compliance guidance, and this was the first update we got from the FTC in one place about the substantiation requirements for health claims. The prior document that they had issued came out in 1998, and it focused only on dietary supplements. This new document expanded and applies to all sorts of health-related products, including foods, OTC, drugs, homeopathic products, even health-related apps. So in the document, the FTC really focused on competent and reliable scientific evidence. You can see a very wordy definition on screen. So it's tests, analyses, researcher studies that have been conducted and evaluated in an objective manner by experts regarding the relevant disease, condition, or function, and also has to be generally accepted by their profession to yield accurate and reliable results. Additionally, the FTC requires that substantiation be of sufficient quantity and quality and considered in light of all of the evidence available to ensure that the claims are substantiated. So the FTC's position is that generally substantiation must be in the form of randomized controlled human clinical testing. That freaked people out, to be honest, in the industry, because it makes it sound like every single product, regardless of the claim, is going to be held to some sort of drug level of testing. When you actually parse through what the FTC expects, it's the sort of things that we've been thinking about all along, but the FTC is trying to put it all in one specific place, what sort of substantiation is sufficient. So the FTC is going to look at a study. So if you're making a claim, there has to be some sort of scientific support that has an adequate designed with a sufficiently large sample, lasted long enough, and the outcome measures should be matching the claims that you're making. The research has to be replicable. The FTC does not require a specific number of randomized controlled clinical trials. They just want to see some good quality evidence and evidence that isn't contradicted by other research that's out there. They also, in reality, they're not expecting a full RCT for every single thing. Like if you've got calcium and you're trying to make a supports, bone health claim, as long as there's enough calcium in there, you don't have to worry. But, this is really something to pay attention to if you're using, for example, proprietary ingredients, or you're making claims that are a little bit less clear in the literature, less common. The FTC also made clear that they don't like animal and in vitro testing. They can be helpful background information, but generally speaking, they want to see testing on humans. Obviously, the outer limit is that it's like if you're making concussion claims, they don't expect you to take a bunch of people and give them concussions. But by and large, animal testing isn't going to be adequate for substantiation for the vast majority of claims. Additionally, we'll often see, meta-analyses. Again, meta-analyses are not adequate substantiation, helpful background information, but you really need to look at those studies within the meta-analysis to make sure that the evidence supports the claims that you're trying to make. And finally, epidemiological evidence, that can be acceptable for certain types of claims. For example, some sort of claim that is related to a long-term effect. It makes sense to look at epidemiological data because you're not really going to have like a 30-year study or something like that. So I'm sure you guys know what you're looking for when you are trying to evaluate the scientific evidence that you have. Is that study a good study? So take a look. Is there a control? Are the sample populations randomized? Meaning, are they randomly distributed between the control group and the treatment group? Are they blinded? So do they know what the purpose of the study is? Do they know who the sponsor is? Are the results statistically meaningful? And finally, are they clinically meaningful? So even if you found a result that's statistically significant, is it something that consumers will perceive? Is it a significant enough benefit that the claims that you're making will match the support? So when you're looking at at studies, really weigh the totality of the evidence. And what that means is, take a look and see what does all the literature say. Don't just ignore the bad studies and act like an ostrich. Take a look and see where are your studies quality? Do the results make sense in the context of whatever else is out there? And then really relevant, I think, to claims related to groups like women, postmenopausal women, premenopausal women, perimenopausal women, pregnant women, et cetera. Are those studies relevant to your specific product and the claims? So did the study use the same botanical ingredient that you used? Is it in the same concentration, dosage? Is the delivery mechanism the same? Is your population the same? And this one is really a tricky one, and we see this quite a bit in cases that are brought, where there'll be some great study, but it doesn't quite match the population. It's a women's product, but then the population is men in their 50s. Does the way it's administered match? So, we'll see, studies or cases related to products during the menstrual cycle. But the instructions for the product say to take the product for only a couple of days, but the testing you have is over 60 days. There's a mismatch between the way your substantiation is administered and the instructions for the product and the way that the product is being used. So that can be a problem if somebody pokes and looks at the claims that you're making. And then finally, do those claims match what was actually measured in the study? And then finally, one of the big controversies that came up with the FTC guidance is, can we still test on ingredients? The FTC likes to see finished product testing, but realistically, that's expensive, and a lot of companies aren't doing finished product testing. So the good news is, yes, you can still rely on ingredient testing, but really in specific circumstances. The claim should be phrased as an ingredient claim, and you have to really look at the study. So don't just rely on the supplier to give you some background information or a couple of slides. Really look and see what that underlying substantiation is. Make sure that dosing matches. Make sure that the population is big enough, that there's a control, that the outcomes match the claims that you're trying to make. And then finally, pay attention to that overall formulation to make sure that the ingredients won't counteract ingredient efficacy. Okay. So with that, I will pass it back to Cassie.
Thank you so much. No, keep that. Thanks, ready? Would you mind bringing back the results from the poll, just so we can see? Perfect. Well, this will work.
I love how the poll is changing.
I know. What about the original one? That'll work. Yeah, the original one, Susan. Thank you. It's good we're all in agreement that we about the clinical studies. So I just thought it would be interesting for us to see what everyone thought. It's all right. We'll move on. Got it. If you, on your VVAX app, there are 3 icons at the top. If you click on the one that looks like 2 little chat boxes, you can type in ask a question, and that will pop up on my phone, and I can ask these lovely ladies here. So if something comes up in your brain while we're talking, go ahead and pop it in there. Okay, question 1. This is going to go to Ms. Salma. Hi. What is the process at Bonafide to ensure your products meet substantiation requirements?
All right, so at Bonafide Health, we actually have our own internal R&D clinical team. So we're actually able to conduct our own trials, double-blind, placebo-controlled, which means that neither our R&D team nor the individual taking the product knows which one they're taking at any given time. So that's step 1. Part 2 of that is we actually just do we're able to get all of our data anytime that we want. We're able to see it, we're able to analyze it, we're able to see the stats on it. And that being said, we can then kind of cater or kind of move it around and see which way we want to go based on what we're seeing. And then that brings us to being able to make our claims. And we then move forward with having working group meetings with various different department heads that understand this stuff, whether it's science or regulatory part of it. And then we make decisions for the organization based on all the data at that point.
So to sort of dive a little bit into that, do you look at a new product hoping to make a claim, or do you study that ingredient or the finished product first and then decide what to claim based on what you find?
Good question. So we also have a preclinical team who goes out, who goes out and I don't want to say sources, but checks out what's the new, hottest, greatest ingredients out there. What are some of the maybe branded ingredients that have clinical data behind them, and just does a preclinical work on those ingredients before we move forward to formulating any kind of finished product with that one ingredient or multiple. There could be previous studies using that ingredient that have another ingredient connected to it where it makes it work better or stuff like that. But that's what we do. We have a preclinical team that does that part first. And then once there's ingredients that we're interested in, then we'll start thinking about formulations and moving on into clinical. Obviously, the clinical trials are done double-blind, placebo-controlled, but also in the right gender and at the right age. And let's say it's a product for sleep, for example. Maybe women, not necessarily that are just menopausal or pre or post, are struggling with sleep. We would also consider worrying about pregnancy and breastfeeding and things like that, because a lot of women that are undergoing those parts of their lives could also need a sleep product, for example.
Well, let's talk about pregnancy and breastfeeding. We're getting there later in the program, but since you arrived here early, yes.
Well, if I could actually just make a point to what Salma was saying, and particularly to what Lauren was pointing out in finding a good study. I believe within sports supplements, for example, women make up 23% of participants. However, only 6% of those studies actually are exclusively focused on women. And what many of these studies do, unfortunately, is because women, depending on where they are in their menstrual cycle, will change how they're metabolizing macronutrients. They're confounders, like, oh my goodness, we're so different. And so their results will be excluded from what the overall group is because it doesn't meet the need of what they're seeing in the majority of their male participants. So it's not just enough looking at, did this study include women? It's looking at that breakdown of within the results, how many women were actually included in those results. So that way you're able to make a fair assessment. And really excitingly, there is more funding available now. The White House just started their White House initiative. I think that call just ended for their first round of applications. The NIH is looking within their National Institute of Minority Health and Health Disparities, particularly on fertility. And then the NIDDK, which is the National Institute of Diabetic, Dietary, and Kidney Diseases. But they kind of handle the nutrition and dietary supplements. They previously, for their first phase trials, would only use animal studies, and they just started a pilot program where they are going to use human clinical trials. So there's more and more funding coming available that you can really go and reach out for, especially to, like, it's amazing that Bonafide has their internal research team, but if you're a newer company or a smaller company, the STTR, the SBIR are all looking for those smaller, newer companies. And a phase 1, you're able to get about $275,000. Your goal is to get a phase 2, which can be, you know, a couple of million within research dollars. So you want to kind of think about that as well as you're going out for research. Sorry, I love research.
Love it. Well, I have another question for you. While you're so Linda just created. This has been in the works.
Yeah.
But a new product, and it's a food product. Mm-hmm. But could you tell us, like, what's the most important lesson you learned about claims while you were in this process?
Yeah, so I'm trained as a physician. I never planned on starting a food sports company, like, ever, to the sadness of my medical student loans. But we'll be real. But I really found this massive hole within the sports nutrition market. So less than 3% of sports nutrition products target women. Of those products that do, many are focused on weight loss or looking sexy, which is important, but, like, I don't know, surprise, we have other needs. And then the products that are focused on endurance sports, unfortunately, are really made based on men's physiology. So depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle, you are going to get a myriad of symptoms, including headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, muscle cramps. And, like, I wouldn't want to deal with that watching, like, a movie marathon on the couch, let alone running a marathon. I'm like, no. And what was sad was we interviewed, before starting the company, over 100 female athletes. Every single one of those women thought it was her body that was the problem and not products on the market, which was, like, heartbreaking, but also very comforting for us to tell them, like, it's not you, it's them. And so knowing the problem, I was like, we need to fix this. And so we continue to do interviews with female athletes. At this point, we've interviewed hundreds of customer discovery female athlete interviews and built the products out based on that. So many of these women are very hesitant when they hear claims. We actually went the route of food instead of a supplement, and we were going back and forth on this because, unfortunately, many women have distrust of supplements. Even though we make up the largest consumers of sports supplements and supplements in general, there's this big distrust because of the proprietary blend label, where they don't know exactly what is going in that product. And if, for example, you're trying to get pregnant, you're going through breastfeeding, you're going through perimenopause, you don't know how that product is going to react for you. So a big thing that women want to see is as much transparency as possible. And that really is taken on by the industry to be the champions of that. Women too, and I will tell you this as a physician, we're amazing researchers. Like, so many of my patients would come in and they're like, what do you know about ashwagandha? And I'm like, let me go check Dr. Google. But you know, we know ingredients. We research something before we make that purchase. So particularly too, if you're a company that's able to do that level of research, you're going to build that trust within your consumer. I think that answered it.
Great question. Yeah, great answer. Thank you. Rachel, and I have some great questions on here from you guys, and I'll get to it in a second. Rachel, GNC has to have a lot of structures in place for product development and clinical trials. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so hi guys. We do have quite an amazing team, I think, in my opinion, of PhD and master's level scientists that are tasked with really navigating the scientific landscape on behalf of GNC. And I was actually just talking about this at lunch, how, we're kind of in a unique position because, of course, we're a retailer. So my team does oversee evaluating our third-party brands on top of really being very in the weeds developing all of our first-party brand products. And so that requires us to spend a lot of time being very nerdy and reading a lot of scientific journal articles. And, there is a lot to wade through. We're looking, so anytime we're approving claims on an ingredient, say we're looking at a trademark ingredient, we will really, of course, tear those studies apart. I think some of our ingredient vendors probably get nervous whenever we're reviewing because we're like asking for raw data and we're, really going deep to make sure that we're going to be able to stand behind it because at the end of the day, we're the ones responsible for whatever claims that we put on our products. But in addition to looking at the science on the trademarked ingredient, we're also doing a really thorough scrub of the public domain to make sure that, to Lauren's point earlier, there's nothing that's contradictory in the public domain. Because I think that we have found examples where, we get a nice little package of research and we're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. We're going to use this ingredient. But once you dig in and look at the public domain, you're like, I don't know. I don't really think that a room full of experts would agree with us that these claims are substantiated. So so my team spends the majority of their time really vetting ingredients and then formulating them into our GNC brand products. And also, we then have the duty and the fun of approving all of the marketing messaging that is going out as well. So, anything that's on a store sign, anything that's on our website, anything that goes in an email, on socials, anything we have to review and have a lot of hard conversations with everybody about, well, actually, we can't say that, and here's why, and then trying to help them come up with alternatives. So, and then we also do fund our own clinical studies over the past, probably since the 90s, we've funded over 100 proprietary clinicals on, sometimes it's on a finished product, sometimes it's on modules within our products. So we really strongly believe in the value of science at GNC and, continue to carry that through with our work every day. So.
Thanks, Rachel. Let's talk about, responsibility. And this is we can all talk about this. Whose job is it? Is it you, the creator of the finished products, to make sure all the ingredients do what they're supposed to do? Is it the supplier? What about borrowed science? Whose job is it to make sure that everything is what it says it should do? Yes, that's what
As the lawyer, it's you. It's you, the maker of the finished products. You're the one that's making the claims. You're the one that's responsible for making sure that the claims are supported. And if the FTC comes knocking, or if the National Advertising Division decides to file a monitoring case, or if a competitor comes after you, ultimately, you're the one that's responsible for making sure that you've vetted the science, that the ingredients you're putting in there match not just the dosage, but also the formulation and also the delivery mechanism in the underlying science, and then also making sure that formula is well designed and that there aren't ingredients in there that might actually interrupt or interfere with the outcomes that you're expecting. And you're also responsible for making sure that the claims, not just on the label, but in your socials, are supported, represent the science. And finally, if you're working with others, like influencers, making sure that what they're saying about your products also are supported by your science.
Anything to add? Anybody?
I'll jump in. Agreed 100%, and that's why we spend so much time evaluating the science. We do have a lot of great partnerships with our ingredient suppliers that, if we needed support, I feel strongly that they would stand with us and help us if something ever came up. But at the end of the day, we are the ones that are responsible, and we take that really seriously. And then you were asking about borrowed science, which I think is an interesting argument that I have a lot of times with our sourcing team, that of course, they always want to save money. They're like, well, we could get a generic of the same standardization for way cheaper. And there are times where, if there's a humongous preponderance of evidence on something, maybe I would consider it, but generally speaking, I think if an ingredient supplier has invested the money into the studies, we really do try to use that ingredient, and I feel like it's being a good industry steward and something that we try to carry through with all of our products, so that ingredient suppliers will continue to fund research. Because if everybody just borrows that research and then uses a cheaper ingredient, then nobody's going to do studies anymore. So
That's a very good point, actually, about maybe sharing some of the monetary piece to conducting clinicals with the ingredients.
Yeah.
A lot of those branded ingredient suppliers would be happy to do that. So.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add also that, for certain ingredients, there's also there are problems with adulteration, for example. So if you're not making sure that your ingredients are well sourced, it may not be what you think it is, or it may not be in the product in the amount that you think it is as well. And so we've seen some NAD activity, for example, involving this exact situation where, a manufacturer purchases ingredient, they don't do that finished product testing to make sure that the right amount is in there, and it's not, because they bought adulterated product. So it's really important to make sure that you're getting your ingredients from a quality supplier as well.
Let's talk about this sort of in terms of women's specificity. What's really the holdup with clinical trials on women? Is it really the hormonal differences? Is it really the period? Like, is it outright sexism? And then,
All of it.
and then how do we get past it? What do we do?
We need to be those agents of change. Like, honestly, it's so frustrating, and especially too, I challenge those companies that do have the monetary capabilities of doing research to be doing research on women, because I'll tell you right now, as a startup, that has been one of the most difficult things for us to get. We work with UNC. There's an amazing researcher, Dr. Abby Smith-Ryan. She's fantastic. Look her up. Her research is incredible. She and I have both lamented to each other of the difficulties of trying to get funding specifically for women-focused research, because so much of it, too, unfortunately wants to focus on just our fertility. And I'm like, cool, that's important. Clearly, that's how you think of us.
I am more than my uterus.
Right. I know. I think there are levels of complexity. So one aspect, too, is that research on women was not allowed from 1977 up until 1993 per the FDA, and then they changed their guidelines again in 1993. There has been then some hesitancy because of the hormonal cycle, which will not affect everything, surprisingly, right? And so it's you as an ingredient manufacturer, as a manufacturer of products, understanding the mechanism of action of your main ingredient, understanding where it is metabolized, understanding how it's excreted, to know, is this going to be affected by the menstrual cycle? If so, how am I standardizing that data? You can end up standardizing so much of that data by saying, okay, we're just testing women in the follicular phase, or we're testing women that are perimenopausal, which is a big age range now. Perimenopausal can be from 35 to 55, especially too because we need more research on that. So we're not going to be learning more about women and how to be researching women if we aren't doing the research. And I really challenge everybody in this room. I mean, there are so many women and men in this room to be like, yes, I deserve to have research that validates who I am as a consumer, because women make up the largest consumers of supplements. I don't know how many times to emphasize that. We're just ignoring them in the population. They're like, man, they're still gonna buy them anyway. No, oh, sorry, makes me really deep.
Oh. Anything to add, Rachel or Selma?
Do you think there's actually I have a question for you. Do you think there's a right amount of time to kind of capture the different phases of the menstrual cycle, right amount of time to be conducting the trial?
So menstrual cycle can range. More and more women are either using apps or are tracking their menstrual cycle, so they have a pretty good idea on it, especially too, like, I highly encourage working with groups of athletes because so many of them are focused on their menstrual cycle. You increase your endurance capacity during your luteal phase, which is those 2 weeks leading up to your menstrual period, and so they want to know when that phase is. So generally, too, the follicular phase is when you're more likely to be like a man. You're going to metabolize your carbohydrates better. You have kind of quick response to metabolism. Your luteal phase is when you're having that real change in terms of fat protein metabolism, and to your body's kind of gearing up to either get ready for pregnancy or get ready for your menstrual cycle. Those phases can range from 14 days and 14 days to 18 and 18, but the more women you have kind of tracking it, the easier it is to kind of include them in a group. And then you can randomize them within that group.
Right. So do you think like a year is long enough? 6 months is long enough?
That's a good question.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think 6 months is substantial.
I have another thought too, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on this. So this is going to be the grill Linda hour. But I think another challenge is this, like if you're investing in a clinical, we know they are really expensive, and every company wants to get the most bang for their buck. When you put it, if you're doing an IRR, or we've had to do them, and you want to show that you're going to make money with this, which obviously when you're investing in a clinical is a gamble in some way, as it is. And I wonder about, I feel like you end up like wanting to stack the deck, like what's the best way to get an outcome that is favorable. So you're like, okay, we're just gonna all men because we know that's the easiest, right? And I mean, GNC has done this because it is a little bit easier. But I wonder, in some of these longer term studies, do you think there is probably more room? I think there's more room to have at least a mixed population, to have men and women. But oftentimes we have veered toward all men. But I don't know how valid. Like, let's say we're looking at like something that we're studying for 3 months. Maybe you're doing a protein supplement for 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, you'll go through then essentially, ideally, either 2.5 or 3 menstrual cycles. So you'll be able to see those phasings and that trend kind of develop. And so it's not going to be as big of an outlier as compared to like if you're doing a
like
2-week,
acute.
Right, an acute type of trial. And so you would want to kind of look at it and standardize it according to that. Additionally, too, when we were doing customer discovery research, women are looking for products that are specified based on their gender. They will buy them, they will pay more for, and unfortunately that's what the market is now, but they will pay more for products that are specified on their gender, as well as products that are specified on their age or their life cycle stage. So you have a real opportunity to make the case of like, listen, like, men can have products, great. You make up 97% of the market products. But women will pay that extra dollar to do it, and so hopefully that substantiates the money going into that study.
So one cool thing that Bonafide Health does is that really? Do you want to ask another question? One cool thing that we do is actually kind of going back to your point before, we survey both the OBGYNs as well as their patients. So we're getting it directly from the patient's mouth, what they're looking for. So it depends on the year sometimes. 1 year, patients are looking for a product to help them sleep. 1 year, they're looking for something to, water weight gain. There's a whole host of different answers that we get. So that's important to do that surveying, to really get in on what the population's looking for. What's the biggest issue that they're having right now?
Yeah, like, so speaking of listening, what might be the white space for pregnant and breastfeeding women? And then what is the maybe risk of creating product for that group? What do you guys think?
You should go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please go.
Please go.
I mean, that's a tricky population because when you market a product specifically to pregnant or breastfeeding women, the implication is that, number one, it's safe for that population. So you have to make sure that whatever you're putting in there has been tested as safe, or if it if you have evidence that can be, analyzed by a
third party.
Yeah, like a third party. I'm just blanking on the name of the. But anyway, that's looked at to make sure that the ingredients in there are safe for consumption by pregnant or breastfeeding women. Because when they see that, they're going to assume that there's a toxicological analysis that takes a look at that ingredient. And it's tricky because you can't really study pregnant women that easily, obviously, because you don't know who's going to sign up for a study for safety while you're pregnant. Right. So it is a limiting factor in terms of what you can put in it. And then the other challenge too is what if you have some ingredients that have already been determined to be safe for a pregnant or breastfeeding audience, and some that aren't. Mm-hmm. So it's something that you have to be really careful about. Women are generally cautioned to take less things, not more, consume less, not more, to ask their doctors for guidance, and the risks of getting it wrong are really significant. So proceed with caution is my advice.
Yeah. Always proceed with caution. There is a certification that's out now. There are only 7, and there are only baby food companies out right now, but 7 baby food companies in the US that have this certification that's called the 1,000-Day Promise. And that certification includes looking at pregnancy for mom, breastfeeding for mom, up until the first couple of years of toddlerhood. So that won't fit all of the needs of your product, but that is kind of something to look at. Additionally, this goes back to understanding the mechanism of action as well as elimination from the body of those products. So when you have a pregnant mom, you have the placenta blood barrier, which if anything is less than 1,000 in molecular weight will pass through. It's a lipid layer through diffusion. And then you're thinking of 3 main organ systems for mom. There is the kidneys, because 30% increase in blood flow. So is this excreted by the kidneys? There is the hepatic system or liver system. You have an increased kind of hepatic congestion secondary to the increase in blood flow and compression during second and third trimester from baby. And then with that increase in blood flow, is this going to cause edema or kind of a mismatch between what's in the arteries and veins versus what's outside in the intercellular space? And so you're concerned about that in terms of increase in intracranial pressure. Sorry, I love sciencey things, and I couldn't help myself.
I guess this is important. I guess is there white space? Is there an opportunity for people to create ingredients or products for pregnant and breastfeeding women? And how do we get past this sort of barrier of I'm scared to touch that? Should we be scared? Yes, proceed with caution, but does that mean don't do it? Or is there money in the best way to be made here?
I agree with you about the kidney, liver, obviously. Yeah. Recently, we filed for an NDI, and that was one of the major things that the FDA was concerned about, how the ingredient is metabolized through the body, and the effects on the kidney and the liver, as well as actually preclinical data, including gestational. So that was kind of a cool way for us to be able to not have to necessarily, there is no warning needed for pregnant women based on that.
That's good to know.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, and what so many of the women shared with us was that they're more inclined to use a product after pregnancy that they were able to use during pregnancy. Mm-hmm. So even if you were to looking at prenatal vitamins, for example, I'm not going to ask the room, but so many women, once they start taking prenatals, they continue to take them after pregnancy because they love the effects that they had from them. And so if you're thinking about that for products, there is room for that there. And it's, again, how are you doing it safely and cautiously? How can you make sure that everything you're putting in makes sense for the consumer?
And that's for an ingredient that I was referring to. So that's for an ingredient. So if multiple ingredient suppliers were to do that and get these, NDIs and do that process, have all that data, then potentially in your finished product, you could have pregnant women maybe recruited for the clinical trial.
Okay, I want to thank you all for all your questions. I'm going to go to the audience now, some audience questions. In your experience, anyone, what is the main health topic most women don't know they can improve with food and or supplements?
I'll start.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I think that I feel like it's like a new world of perimenopause being a thing that people are talking about. I mean, even for myself, it wasn't something that was really on my radar until the past couple of years. And there are a lot of ingredients that we've seen that have some compelling data. We haven't. I don't think that we have a huge customer base that's looking for those products yet. We're looking to create one if anybody's interested. But you know, I do think it's a burgeoning topic that there is a lot of research, and I hope to see a lot more product innovation there for women, because it's a long time. Like you said, 35 to 55. That's a long period of time where you can really be improving your health and the way that you feel. So I think that's a huge opportunity.
Any other? I would say muscle. Yeah. Whatever the word is for when it goes away when you're older.
Atrophy.
Thank you. This is my opinion. But
I worked on an ingredient for that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts there about health topics that most women don't know they can
I mean,
improve?
cycle syncing is a big one. So if women are still menstruating and are looking to increase their workout capacity, their endurance capacity, you can change that through how you're eating and the supplements when you're taking those supplements throughout your menstrual cycle. And there's more and more research available on that you don't necessarily have to go out and complete those studies. So like Dr. Abby Smith-Ryan's research, for example, the ISSN also just put out a brand new guidelines for female athletes, like saying actually the amount of protein that they should be taking, and it's quite more than what everybody thought previously. So you have those studies that are out there that are available, and if you are able to kind of encourage that, I think that it's exciting and something that the patient or consumer population can be educated on.
Another audience question is, how can we educate, this will be interesting for you, Rachel, how can we educate retailers, such as Walmart, on women's products?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, at the end of the day, the retailer wants to make money. And so by really coming prepared with that market data, market research, the consumer research, showing that there is a demand for the products, and, you know, they will find a way to sell them if there is a customer there for them. I think for GNC, like we're just now, I can't even say we're hitting our stride yet with better customer education platforms. I mean, my team manages our blog, and so we actually have a team of dietitians that is writing all of the content that's on our site, which I think is a huge step in the right direction. But there is such a huge opportunity to educate on, like even Cass, what you were saying about muscle. It's like for those of us in the industry, like we know this. We know we should be lifting weights. We know we need more protein. We know these things, but like if I think about most of the sort of the normal women in my life, like they are not thinking about these things, and I think long term, I mean, even like as a public health initiative, it's a really big opportunity that like I know we can do more to educate. We're trying, but it's hard. It's complicated stuff to explain to people. So it's a huge opportunity, but I think at the end of the day, to get retailers to pick up the products, we have to show them that there are customers that want them. Mm-hmm. and also, I think the retailers need to be taught how to teach our customer, you know? So, I don't know if anybody else has thoughts.
Ready for a new one? Okay. What would you advise a woman trying to buy celebrity-made products? For example, a Kardashian fat-burning product.
The same thing you'd advise them about any other product, meaning look at the label. make sure that you understand what's in it, and so you can figure out what claims are likely to be supported and which ones aren't. Because at the end of the day, whether it's a Kardashian endorsing it or if it's a GNC, they should have certain ingredients in the right amount. So it's really doing your research.
I guess speaking of Kardashians, I don't know if this applies. Let's talk about Ozempic. And if we want, we got to go there a little bit. Is there, like, can we make claims yet about, like, this product, this supplement, this food might be helpful if you're using this drug?
So that's tricky because it's a drug.
Right.
So you're not supposed to talk about supplements as adjuncts to drugs from an FDA perspective, not from an FTC perspective.
Right.
So that's a steer clear zone thing.
This is, I actually sat through a couple of hours worth of research presentations on Friday about this exact topic that I was like falling on the floor just thinking about how, I mean, I think that these drugs are amazing and they are going to change the lives of a lot of people. And I think like everybody's inclination at first is like, oh, drugs bad, supplements good. And I'm like, well, I mean, this is, I do think like these are here to stay in some way, shape, or form for a long time. And as an industry, like, and when you look at what's being studied, nobody's really studying. Well, what if you give somebody Ozempic and then give them protein or HMB or and also a strength training regimen to help them to maintain their muscle mass while they're losing weight? And I mean, it's a huge opportunity. And I do think it's going to be hard with, like, how do you stay within the confines of the regulatory world? But also, there is a benefit to, and I also hope that somebody will start studying it too. It's something that we've kicked around. I mean, but again, this is where you get caught up, because if you're not going to be able to communicate the benefits, are we going to spend $500,000, $1 million on a study to not be able to make any claims? But yet for the consumer and for the public, it is the right thing. We need to know what should people be doing while they're taking these drugs to prevent some of the side effects and the potential long-term consequences. So I think it's a big opportunity, but it is definitely going to be fraught and a challenge to navigate.
There's so many good questions. I'm so sorry we're not going to be able to get to all of them. This is interesting. What are the legal differences between using customer versus influencer testimonials as quoted on product claims?
Well, either way, you have to have substantiation. So if it's just customers randomly leaving reviews on your website and you've never paid them, never gave them free stuff, you're not really responsible for what they say. But the second that you include it in marketing, whether you paid them in the beginning or whether you saw this review that you really love, it is your responsibility to make sure that you can support it, because you're not allowed to make claims through whether they're customers or influencers that you yourself cannot make.
Anything to add
Yeah,
there?
we actually we launched a weight management product called Glucotrim that everybody wants to say that it's reducing your appetite, but we just didn't really have anything in our ingredient toolbox that we felt like was really going to deliver on that claim. And then everybody in their reviews is saying that it is helping to reduce their appetite, and our marketing team is like, oh my gosh, they want to put it everywhere, and we're like, we can't do it. I mean, we just have to hope people read the reviews, but we can't say it as GNC since we don't have a study to substantiate it. So.
This is interesting. So at which point does maybe testing with such granularity on women, or doing a study with that much granularity, when does it stop being a supplement and start being a therapeutic or a pharmaceutical? Where's the line there?
Like, meaning when you're venturing into disease territory and out of our space?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, oh, no, please, no. It's the disease modification aspect is really, like, when you have that differentiation of it. And so, like, if you're, improving energy or, I don't know, I'm blanking on a few other ones now, but it's like when you're saying, like, this is going to decrease, like, your blood glucose levels and make you have better diabetic control. This is going to like help modify, feelings of headaches. When you start to get into very specific disease aspects and symptomatology, that's when you're starting to have the issue.
Exactly. And I think, and actually that's one of the tricky things also that you see a lot of times in studies. A lot of studies are very focused on more disease outcomes, but from a marketing perspective, you're not allowed to say that. So then you end up seeing a mismatch between the outcomes in the study and what you're trying to say, because really the differentiator between a drug and a supplement is what you're saying it can do.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do one more question. This went by so fast.
That's why we have the happy hour.
That's, yeah, to be continued out there. Let's see. So let's talk about, this person asked a specific problem, but let's talk about women beyond the uterus. And I harp on this a lot in all my things, is what else can we do for women besides care about their uterus? Like, what other health problems might women have, or particular health needs that don't have to do with menstruation or having a baby or breastfeeding? Is there anything that is particular to women or functions differently in women that we can help with?
Yeah, so women are at increase of REDS, which is reduced energy deficiency syndrome, and because they aren't then consuming enough calorically, it leads to an end to your menstrual cycle, yes, is one, but osteopenia and osteoporosis, as well as changing within hair, skin, and nails, decreased in terms of your immunologic response. As well, women have a higher increase of cardiovascular risk that isn't being discussed, particularly too once you're going through the perimenopausal period. And so it's, how are we really looking at the woman holistically outside of just our baby making capabilities? And then when baby making ends, like, oh, you can just fall off a cliff, which is how I feel like sometimes people treat us. They're like, no, it's fine, you're done here. And two, because you're having that hormonal shift, so much of mood changes. Like, not only are you having a drastic change in mood because of a change in your hormonal function, but your body isn't the same, how you look isn't the same, how, your, for example, skin elasticity, where we have fat deposition changes. Like, all of these things change. And so it's, how are we then, I know, I feel it too, I'm like, how are we then addressing the woman as a whole person and acknowledging that she's strong, powerful, and beautiful at every age, not just when we're like in a swimsuit and able to create babies?
So that's a good, steps to that. That's a good place to end. On your VBox app, there is a, on the far right, it's like a little maybe clipboard looking thing, is the survey for the session. It will take you 3 minutes or less to complete. Please do that for me if you would. We're trying to make content that you all like and need. So the more we know, the better it will be for you. And I want to thank you four lovely ladies for joining me and for coming. It's so nice of you. Thank you all so much.